Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.
Do you remember the teen years with your kids? Are you in them now, or are they approaching? Today we're talking about communication and learning to use effective conversation to live with and love your teen. I was fortunate enough to have the tools of the Myers Briggs Type Indicator to use while my children were going through the teen years. This knowledge provided me with insights on how to adapt and improve my communication style while they were going through emotional and hormonal troughs and peaks that these years bring. As a parent, you too can use the MBTI instrument to communicate successfully with your teens. In fact, even with your adult children. The number one thing is to understand your type and your teen's type, and I can help you with that if it's needed. This provides insight into how each of you prefer to receive and convey information, make decisions, and interact with the world. There are no better or worse personality types, and everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. Recognizing your teen's personality type isn't a judgment of their character, but a description of their tendencies enables you to respect the uniqueness of your teen that's living with you. When you get to know your teen's type, then you're going to be able to communicate, change your style of communication to suit theirs. My son Jack's an introvert, I'm an extrovert. He needs more time alone to recharge than I do. I understand that I don't really need to recharge, so I give him space and time. My daughter Cassie is an extroverted child. I understand that she needs to engage in social activities, keep talking, and going out. She doesn't need time to reflect and gain her energy. I've talked about thinking and feeling types in previous podcasts, so check them out after the show. I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you with the ones that you care about the most. I really hope you enjoy today's guest, Jeanine Mouchawar, and can take away at least one thing that you're able to use with your teens and perhaps with your adult children too. Jeanine Mouchawar is a life coach for parents of teenagers. She helps making parenting easier by teaching communication approaches that reduce conflict and create calm. Parents learn how to teach their teens cooperation, responsibility, and critical life skills to empower them for success. Jeanine earned her BA from Stanford University and is a certified professional life coach. She's married and has 3 adult children. Hi, Jeanine. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kate. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
It's really great to talk to someone else who actually has adult children. So you and I, as parents, we've survived those teenage years and we've come out the other side. And reasonably happily, I assume, for you and I. And I'm sure that listeners today would love to know and share your journey and the tips and strategies that helped you survive those teen years. And it's really actually sad that we say survive, because I think those years can actually be really fun and happy years if you get it right and you understand your children and you can speak to them and communicate in the right kind of language. So tell us, what happened to you with your teen kids that brought about the changes that you made?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's definitely possible to enjoy these years. But I think where a lot of times we get stuck is most of us parent the way we were parented. And that approach doesn't work so effectively for all children all the time, especially in today's culture. And I think that's why a lot of parents aren't real thrilled with the relationship they currently have and wish it wasn't so contentious, and wish they did have more joy in their life. But to answer your question, I have 3 children. They are now 26, 24, and 21, so a little older than the teen years. But, raising them went pretty well in the early years, and I did just parent pretty much the way I parented because it was all I knew, just like most people. And it worked pretty smoothly until we got to the teen years. And in the teen years, what I found was my approach, especially with my middle child, just wasn't working anymore. We were having a lot of conflict, a lot of arguments, battles, butting heads. He started engaging in some risky behavior, which really scared me and worried me. And as I was scared and worried, what I found myself doing, and again, this is in hindsight with the wisdom I have now, I was trying to control the situation and make him behave the way I wanted to, often through yelling and punishments and grounding. And what happened is it would just turn into more conflict, more battles, more yelling. On his part, I think he got so frustrated with me, and he just, was lying more and withdrawing more from the family unit. And really, my approach was creating the exact opposite impact of what I wanted. So when he was a senior, there was an event that happened that was unfortunate. He actually showed up high to school the very first day senior year and was in essence expelled. But the great thing was, I always think that everything happens for a reason. We ended up enrolling in a program that not only helped him gain some life skills and emotion skills that he was missing, but it also taught me a new way of approaching him and communicating with him that really resonated. And as we started learning these skills and tools, it just transformed our communication, our relationship. And I noticed all of a sudden his risky behavior of, smoking pot, that was mostly what was going on, started to decrease. And we started to connect again. And we started to find a way to communicate without so much turmoil and friction. And I was so blown away that this had happened and a little bit resentful that I hadn't known any of this earlier. I thought, why was I learning calculus when I could have been learning this, which was so much more useful? But I thought, I want to just get this information into the hands of as many parents as possible. So I went looking for a modality to do that. And I stumbled into life coaching, which I had never heard of. And when I enrolled in a program and started my coaching certification, it became clear really fast that a lot of the coaching skills that I was taught and educated on were really aligned with what I had learned in the parenting program. So I ended up meshing all of that together. My, 26 years of parenting experience, my experience in going to this parenting program with my son, and coach training. And that's how I became a life coach for parents of teens. It's all the information I use to help people today.
Wow. That's actually a wonderful story, though, for people listening and for myself, because that's exactly what happens, is that when we have fear of losing control and we don't know what to do, we don't know how to react to that, we don't know how to change our parenting. Nobody gives us lessons. That child gets born and there's no handbook that someone hands you and goes, hey, this is how it works. And if they do, it's outdated. But it is that need. We did grow up in a generation where you were told what to do. You weren't listened to necessarily either. And we also expect, when children are younger, they are much more malleable and they don't necessarily push back as hard as when they're teenagers and they're questioning everything and anything. Mm-hmm. And for people who are listening who might have children that are showing those risky behaviors and are doing things that they can't control, it gives you back that feeling of control. Even while I'm listening to you, I'm feeling like, oh my goodness, well, for those people, there is an answer. There is something that you can change here. I mean, I was fortunate that hasn't happened. My children are young adults too now, and that didn't happen to me during those teen years and that development. Mm-hmm. But for those friends of mine that did, they dealt with it exactly the same way that you were talking about, because none of us had the tools to sit down and go, let's change, let's make a change. So I think this is really valuable information. And I think as parents, like you say, we parent as we were either taught or what feels natural to us. We don't go to parenting school. Nobody says, this is the stage of life. Let's go and see if we can change it. Let's go and see your child's going through a totally different, So really, there should be a parenting school. There should be an academy of parenting that we could all go to and learn all of these different behaviors, different ways of changing things.
Especially, there's so few resources for parenting a teen. Like there's a lot out there for when they're little, but not a lot for parenting a teen. And so, I think it's just such a disservice. And hopefully, one step at a time, we can change that.
Yes.
But I think to your point too, well, just, if we parent intuitively or we parent the way we were parented, that tends to work in most situations when the kids are young. And so when we see it working, we get this, subconscious feedback like, oh, this is working and my child's smiling and we're connected and I'm getting hugs and kisses, by my approach of sharing my wisdom and sharing my knowledge, because they're so filled with curiosity when they were little. And so it gets reinforced inside of us even more, like this is the parenting approach that works. But to your point, when all of a sudden you're dealing with a teenager, right now, like they want to come up with their own wisdom. They're not curious and want your advice anymore. And so it's just to pause a minute and recognize and have some compassion for yourself that, okay, my old parenting approach, which worked really well for a number of years, is not going to work anymore because my teenager really needs something different from me now.
That's right. And nobody explains that. Nobody explains that, except for you and some other people out there. Because if we all knew that, we would honestly make the effort to change, because I do think that they really need parents more than ever at that stage. And we're not there for them because we don't know how to deal with it. So, to have that solidarity behind them going through their teen years of someone who actually gets them and is mindful and making sure that we emotionally control ourselves before we talk to our teens. Now, I want you to know, when you go through this, when you start talking about the kind of behavioral therapy that you did and the takeaways, that even as adults, it's still really hard not to tell them what to do. You can never think you're going to be perfect. These things are all wonderful in theory and it's really great to try out. But, as my husband said to my 30-year-old son as he left the house the other night, oh, Jack, I think you need to wear a jacket. It's cold outside. And I looked at him and I said, he's 30. He can decide whether he needs to wear a jacket or not. It doesn't stop.
It's hard to break those habits.
It is, but awareness is huge. So tell us, what did you take away from the courses and what did you put into your course that you offer to parents?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, what I did is, I sort of took away some skills and approaches from the parenting program and combined it with some coaching skills and created a 5-step foundational process that I teach all of my clients. It's where we start. And would you like me to share those steps with you?
I would love you to. That would be fabulous.
Okay.
Go for it.
So step 1 is kind of right where you were just talking about, Kate, how, when we want to approach a conversation with our teenagers from a place of feeling grounded and calm. And when we see our teens do behavior that is worrisome, right? If they're vaping or drinking or having sex or disrespectful or their grades are plummeting or they're fighting with a sibling, any of those things, it's just perfectly natural that we as parents get flooded with, anger, frustration, disappointment, irritation, sadness, stress, anxiety, all those feelings. And when those feelings naturally flood our body, what happens is we can't resist the urge just talk to them right then and there, because our bodies want to get rid of those feelings. And we have this thought error. We think that by expressing what's going on inside of us, sharing our knowledge, maybe trying to make them do things a certain way or stop doing things, that it's going to get rid of those feelings inside of us. But if you take a second and think about it and think about the interaction with your teen when you do this, most of the time, those feelings don't go away because their behavior doesn't change. So what we work on, the very first thing we work on, and you touched on this earlier, is how to be like intentionally respond from your wise mind versus emotionally react from a place of fear and anger or worry or frustration, irritation, any of those things. Because when we approach our teens flooded with those emotions, they're going to feel that from us. And they start to anticipate your disappointment in them. They anticipate that they're going to get punished, or that you are going to feel ashamed of them. And they don't want to experience any of that. So as you're trying to just initially talk to them, they're going to either push away, right? Slam the door, go away, mom, right? I'm not talking to you, shut up, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Or if you have a more just a teen who cooperates more, they might tell you what they think you want to hear just to end the conversation. And neither is going to change behavior. So just to realize when we approach our teens like that, that is why we're not getting the response we want. So the very first thing that we work on is how to settle your emotions.
And the trouble is, when you do approach that, you just become angry at yourself because they're not doing as you ask. So it doesn't actually give you any true release of feelings, because you get ignored, the door gets slammed. You almost follow because you really want to make your point. So you follow that slammed door and you follow and just increase. So it actually doesn't really bring any great relief to you, but it does take great self-control not to do this, because I know that even the other week, our son's living with us part-time type thing at the moment. And he gets up in the morning, and the first thing, we didn't realize it, my husband and I, but the first thing that we said was, make sure you make the bed properly today, pull that blind up, and put your washing in the wash basket. And he said to me the other week, Mum, do you know what? A simple, good morning, Jack. How are you going today? Would be really nice. And I didn't even think about it. I didn't think about it because he never reacted. There was no reaction from him, but he was right. What we were doing was seeing all the wrong. And instead of starting off with a conversation that was chattable, that was even something that he could interact with, we were slamming him with, we want this and this done. And he's an adult. So as a teen, and he's not doing anything truly wrong. He's not vaping, he's not doing drugs or anything like that. We're just telling him to tidy up his bedroom. So imagine the impact of something like you're talking about, the stress and everything that builds up. So it is, and it is very hard. And I think people need to know, listeners need to know that this isn't an easy thing, and it is a great practice. You really have to practice this stuff and be aware.
Yeah. It isn't easy. And, there are resources out there to help you. And you are not a bad parent for seeking out those resources, to help. Because I can share the simple concept with you of getting calm before you have a conversation. But you're right. It is not easy. It's definitely not easy to do.
Yeah. So how do you get calm before?
Yeah. Oh, well, different things work for different people. Yeah. Some of the strategies that I talk to with my clients, the first thing you can do is you can think about your five senses. Like, what is calming when you pet your dog, or you're listening to certain music, or you're sipping your tea in the morning. Like, think about your five senses and what you find calming when you connect with that. So those are 5 ideas right there. Also, get out in nature. Exercising is a great thing. Go for a walk, close your eyes, breathe in the fresh air, look at the trees, try to just do something that feels calming. I live by the ocean, so I'm really lucky. I can, go listen to the waves and put my feet in the sand. But you can do this. I'm in my office right now and I see a tree outside my window. That is just as effective. So, think about physical things you can do in terms of the exercising or taking a walk. Breath work is always so powerful. And that could be something as hand over your heart and closing your eyes and taking 3 really slow, deep, calming breaths. Like that can be really impactful.
It can be, and it doesn't take long, does it? Yeah. Go on. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, as when my clients coach with me for a longer time, we start going kind of deeper into that and connecting to the fact that it's really your thoughts that are creating all these emotions that are going on inside of you. So we start to come up with some soothing thoughts or mantras. So just to put, to give your listeners a few examples. Like one mantra can be like, this is just for today, not forever.
Yep.
Right? Because we love as parents to fast forward, right? If they're lying, they're always going to be a liar, right? If they get a D on a test in school, like they're going to fail every class from then on. We love to just fast forward and take what we see now and think, oh, it's always going to be this way, which really floods us with worry. So coming up with some sort of, mantra or thought that you can start, saying to yourself in your mind, like, this is just for today, not forever. Or another one I really love is like, they just haven't learned this skill yet.
Yes.
Right? So if they're being disrespectful, they just haven't learned the skill of how to manage their anger yet. Right?
And hopefully they will one day.
Yes. And we can help them with that, right? But it opens up the possibility for you that it can change, it can be different. And that in and of itself is also calming.
Very true. And mine always has been, tomorrow is another day. Like with my daughter contacting me, she says, oh, look, today was terrible. And all this. I say, hey, go to bed, get some sleep. Tomorrow's another day and you'll wake up and everything will be different. And it usually is. It usually is. I mean, sometimes it's not. But for me, it does give me that headspace and I can wait. You can put a hold on that whole thought system. But I do agree, we do catastrophize about our children and, oh my goodness, if they've got a D, they're never going to get a job. It's how will they ever? So, so you're right, projecting forward and just living in the now and going, hey, this is today. This is what's happening today. And the thing about what you're talking about is, do you know what? If I have the skills, I can actually change what's going to happen tomorrow. I can change my reaction. I can change the things that I do because you're in charge of your changes. And your changes will change their reactions because you can't ask them to change theirs without that, can you?
Right. That's such a good point, Kate. To recognize there are 2 of you here. You're in a relationship. It's you and your teen. And if you change something you do, it's inevitable that your teen is going to respond differently.
Yep.
And to recognize you have a lot of control and power over changing the dynamic that's currently going on just by you trying some new things, just trying this step alone, right?
Yes.
Try the next time you talk to your teenager, try to get calm before you start the conversation and then take notice of what changes in their response. It's fascinating to watch.
It is. And the thing is to remember that you won't get it right every time. You'll mess up and you'll make mistakes. And that's okay. And that is okay.
We are human.
We are. And as long as you're getting something in along the way, it's all good. Now, the next one, I'm not sure if I've got your list here, but when you've got stating your observation, is that the next one in your list or not?
Yes, that is.
Because I love that. And I think that's so hard. Tell
It
me
is
about it.
so, yes, it can be hard, but once you understand the concept, you can access the information easily. So the idea in step 2 is just to notice the situation, observe what's going on and just state your observation simply and clearly, right? With no little add-on, little judgy comments or adjectives.
No
And,
sarcasm.
no sarcasm. That's such a good one, right? No criticism. Just simple and clearly. So that might be anything from, hey, I noticed a vape pen in your backpack. Or, hey, I noticed you got a D on the test. Or, looks like you are really angry at your sister right now. Right? Just stating your observation without any, like you said, sarcasm or additional commentary. That helps your teen to further engage in the conversation because they're not feeling criticized.
Okay, so what reaction then, if they say yep, or they give a short answer, do you engage further? Or and how do you engage further? And you talk about the words that are really, really important in further engagement and questioning. So I might be getting ahead of myself here. So you just keep talking and I'll listen.
Sure. Yeah, no, step 3 that I teach is all about getting curious, but it's getting curious from a place of calm and compassion, like really tapping into your sense of wonder, because our parent brain loves to make assumptions about why they got the D on the test, why they aren't cleaning their room, why they aren't, doing the dishes, why they're drinking. We love to just naturally come up with the reasons, but this approach is about really channeling into telling yourself, I really don't know. And I really want to find out from a place of like love and compassion for my child. So step 3 is all about getting curious, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get at the root cause of the behavior you're seeing that you don't like, right? So
yes,
every behavior starts with something that you're thinking causes a feeling inside of you, and then that causes the behavior. So, right? So for example, say you're thinking, gosh, I really want to fit in with my friends. And so you have this thought, like, I really want to fit in. And all of a sudden your friends are all smoking in the bathroom. And so you're feeling this pressure inside of you because you want to fit in to smoke with them. And so you smoke with them. Right. But it starts with a thought in your mind and a feeling that's coming up inside of you. That happens before the behavior. But what I find is so many of us focus on the behavior, and we really need to back that up and figure out what's going on inside of our child. Right. So it would sound something like, hey, I found a vape pen in your backpack. What's going on? That's it. That's like step 2, 3.
Yep.
Right. Just simple and curious, where you really want to know, right? Maybe it's their friends and their friend was worried that their parent was going to bust them. And so they asked, their friend asked them to hold it. Like, take yourself to a place where you just really assume that you really don't know what is going on, and you really want to be curious and connect with them about what are they thinking and feeling that caused that behavior.
So when you say what was, hey, you found a vape in your backpack, and they say, yeah, where do you go from there? So do you say, you can't say why because you don't want to say why. You're trying to avoid why, because why is that question that's going to put pressure on everything. So what
100%.
What word might you use? How would you
start your next sentence with what? Once in a while, how works, but start it with what? Like, what happened? What's going on? Can you tell me about that? Right. Yep. Something very vague. And just coming from a place of curiosity again.
Okay.
You're trying to further the conversation where they're not going to feel defensive or like they're going to get in trouble. Because if they feel that, they won't share with you.
No. And I think, like you say, why, even as an adult, why instantly pushes you under you're expected to have an answer, and it's expected to be a right answer. But like you say, when you're saying,
things I teach, like take that word why out of your dialogue and vocabulary immediately, because 99% of the time it puts the other person on the defense.
Yes.
Why do you have a vape in your backpack? Why'd you fail that test? Why'd you hit your brother? Right? It's just, it immediately shuts the conversation down.
It does.
I know this because I did this.
Yes. And so I kind of, when I look at personalities wise, I look at my daughter. I used to do it in a different way from you, in the sense of she'd come home and she's a perceiving type of person. So she's quite cruisy and easygoing, and she doesn't really care as long as she passes stuff. And so knowing that about my child is really important, because when she comes home and says, guess what? I got 53% in my test today. And I would say, oh, okay. I didn't say why. And because I knew who she was, I just went in with, oh, okay. So tell me about it. And she said, she said 2 other people got 53 and 2 got 50 and 1 got 49. And I said, okay, so how do you feel about that? She said, really good, because the 3 other people did worse than I did.
Yeah.
And
she got the highest grade in the class.
That's right. She got the highest. She got the highest just pass, type of thing. Yeah. So if I'd come in and said, why, my goodness, you should have got way higher than that, we would have had a massive argument. But I do understand what you're saying. I don't use what you're saying all the time. And I think it's wonderful. If we take why out of our conversation, fantastic. I totally get that. Trouble is, there are a whole lot of people out there who are like my husband and my children. They're thinking types, and their first question is to everybody, why? Why did you do that? How did you do that? So it does mean that.
I was listening to your podcast last week about the thinking types versus the feeling types. And this really absolutely applies right here. I am a thinking type. And so why would come out of my mouth all the time. And so when I learned this like step 2, 3 process of just stating your observation followed with a what question, I found that it worked with my feeling child who was having the risky behavior, but it also worked with my 2 thinking children who, where things weren't quite as intense. And so
it works with everyone.
It does. It works for everybody, which is, it was really fascinating to listen to your podcast and be thinking like how that meshes into these 5 steps. Cause I think it all really is very cohesive and works together.
It is. And I think the more we learn about every different thing, parenting and people are made up of so many different aspects. The more that we know about everything, what you're talking about, what I'm talking about, there are so many people out there with wonderful knowledge about things that people listen and actually take it on board. Then I just think that grows you as a person too, doesn't it? It's so important.
Absolutely.
It's so important. So how do you help parents set their appropriate boundaries then? Because, part of all of this and part of today's resilience with kids and in parenting is not giving in too much, you don't want to punish, and you don't want to reward necessarily, but how do you, they've got a vape that's sitting there, they're smoking. What are you going to do about that?
Yeah. Well, I start with clients with these 5 steps, and then the boundary setting kind of pivots off of that. But just to touch really quickly on steps 4 and 5, the 4 is validating their feelings. It's really important to understand we're talking about their feelings here, because I think most of us, the way we learned was to validate the situation. And I'm not saying that you should condone the smoking pot or whatever the behavior is. We don't want to condone or agree or be permissive, right, about the behavior. But what we want to do is we want to validate how they're feeling So they feel like you understand them and like nothing is wrong with them. So validating their feeling is like, hey, it makes perfect sense that you would feel pressure to smoke, given the fact all your friends were. Right. So you're not saying, oh, great, no problem. Glad you smoked, good for you. Like, we're not saying that. What we're doing is we're connecting with them over their feeling of pressure. Because if that's the root cause of the problem, and when we can help them feel like nothing is wrong with them for feeling pressure in that situation, and that we understand that, and that we're on their side, that anyone in that situation would feel pressure, and that would cause you maybe to take an action that isn't the best choice for you, right? When we can slow it down and really connect with them and help them feel like we understand their feelings, that enables them to let those feelings pass through them. And when they do that, they can access better decision-making tools in their mind, which is step 5. In step 5, we're asking them for what are their ideas to make a better choice in that situation when they're feeling pressure, versus what most parents do. And what I did is we like to offer our solutions. Like, we like to tell them, oh, you should do this, you should do that. Right. And teens don't want to hear that. They want to solve their own problems. They want to come up with their own ideas. And honestly, we want them to do that. We want them to build their problem-solving skills. And when we're constantly giving them the answers and the solutions and what they should do, they're not building those skills. So when they launch, after high school, these skills don't come easy and naturally to them. And that's often why we see some of these college kids, or kids who go into a trade, like, they've got a lot of anxiety and stress, and their lives kind of, don't go the way they think it will. And sometimes they end up back at our house.
Yes.
So we really want to help them build these skills and give them the chance to figure out, how else could I handle that situation? And be a sounding board for them.
Yeah. That's really great. And that makes me feel myself, the minute you say that and you're talking to a totally different thing, it does sound reassuring, and it does give them a space to say, hey, I need some help, or can you help me work out a way that, I can't do this, or so that I can say, I've had my children a couple of times say to me, Mum, can you tell me I can't go out tonight, when they were younger? And I'd say, why? And they said, because I don't want to, but I need you to tell me. So interesting. Very interesting. It kept them safe. Now, Jeanine, I could talk forever to you, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to wind us up. But one thing I want to quickly say is that as they're wonderful, there's 5 steps are amazing, and I'd love you to let our listeners know where they can find you. You'll be in my show notes, but where they can find you, and just quickly what your special masterclass might cover.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you can find me. I have a website, JeaninMouchawar.com. JeaninMouchawar. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. I have a Facebook group if you want to join that's specific for parenting teens. I go in there once a week and we pick a topic and we have a community and we talk about that topic in depth. So that's another resource for you. We can put that in the show notes as well. Yeah. And I was just sharing with you that I'd be happy to offer a free class that I ran called, actually I have 2. One is How to Talk So Your Teen Listens. And that actually goes through the 5 steps we talked about today in more depth. So if you'd like to, explore that, go check out that class. And then there's another class called No More Battles with Your Teens. And I walk through I think it was 10 or I can't remember how many, but a dozen or so of the most common battles, why it's occurring, what we're doing, and what we should do instead. Like, what would be a different approach that would get us a better outcome that we're looking for.
Oh, that's a great opportunity for the people listening, because, it's really good to know and understand all those things. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your wonderful insights into relationships. And I could honestly talk to you for hours because there is so much around this, and possibly we could talk again sometime. That'd be wonderful.
Oh, I would
And
love that, Kate. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's an absolute pleasure. And you and I can continue this work with adult children because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there having problems with them as well.
Honestly, I'm still continuing it today. Full transparency. I practice my skills every day and I don't always get it right. But, there's always tomorrow, as you said.
That's right. There is. And we want them to be with us for the rest of our lives. So absolutely. Mm-hmm. So take care and thank you very much again.
Thank you.
How can you change your conversation? How can you find out who you and your child are? Adult, teenager, or younger child? Talk to me and let's get started. My details are in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who Is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.